This is the second opinion piece that I've opted to run before the end of the year, documenting in this case my own preference for Battlemechs, and which are my favorites. I will briefly be adding the disclaimer once again that this isn't the normal content on this channel, but I am making these as these are a bit easier to make at the end of the year during this busy time. There are a slew of deeper lore videos on their way after this, including a multitude of new mech videos coming in January. I should add that I've seen some interesting remarks regarding the perception of certain mechs as a whole, which I find somewhat amusing. I want to make it perfectly clear that these are just my personal favorites and aren't determined by how optimized they are. For instance, one of the mechs that I think is essentially bad for the game, and is largely bad despite being arguably the most powerful battle mech in the game, is in fact the Hellstar. I should also add that I'm not going to be distinguishing between eras or technology levels. This is simply my favorite battle mechs as a whole, across the board. I enjoy hundreds of designs across all the eras of Battletech, so this is going to likely bend towards the eras I play the most, which are the Succession Wars and Clan Invasion, though there are going to be a few that might surprise you. Perhaps this entry might as well cover all of its siblings as well, but for me the Archangel embodies some of the most horrifying mechs in the history of the setting. This isn't meant to be a full mech breakdown by any means, and I've never fielded any Celestials myself, though I have watched them in action. They are generally undergunned, though they are still effectively armed. What makes them so interesting to me? Their appearance and their playstyle are just so unique. That, and they tend to have crazy cyborg pilots who are going to die within a few years of fighting you regardless. The Archangel in general is just so hard to kill. Critical hits on the mech don't typically go anywhere. It doesn't possess in most configurations an easy button to knock it out and suddenly stop the fight. Even descending into melee to finish it off quickly can result in your demise due to its retractable blade. It, and the series around it, are the ultimate zombies, and I just find them fascinating as a result. So yes, at the beginning of this list I'm going to tell all of you that the Archangel is my 10th favorite mech. Not even because it matches my playstyle either. It's just because it's really cool. I'll not lie, light mechs as a whole generally don't make it into my top thought of designs. Now that doesn't mean they're bad by any means. Anyone who disrespects a light mech is going to quickly find themselves in a dangerous situation. A light can take down a heavy or an assault, especially under the right circumstances, but that doesn't mean that they're my favorites. There are a few exceptions to this though, and the Firestarter is definitely one of them. I've just had too many games where I've seen FS9s and I've used FF9s to just tear targets to pieces that looked like it was going to be an unfavorable result for me. Those machine guns and medium lasers will shred targets in close. It's a great killing machine. It's great at killing mechs, vehicles, and infantry. It's a true nightmare of the Succession Wars, and while I think the Jenner might be a better overall mech, I think the Firestarter is my favorite light mech overall, just due to my personal experience and its overall functionality. Anyone who is foolish enough to dismiss an FS9 as being just a Firestarter, or some random nonsense, is going to sorely regret having such an arrogant attitude towards this mighty 35-ton Maverick. Also, just as a terror weapon, it's a horrifying machine to see it burst through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man and hose down an entire infantry platoon or vehicles with flamethrowers. Did someone order barbecue? Well, tough. That's what you're going to get, and it'll be well done. Despite not being a Celestial, in theory, the Tenshi is in fact a Celestial, just made by the Draconis Combine during the Dark Age. I think it's a beautiful mech visually for starters, and I love its configurations. It's also very haunting despite its appearance, and it is just different enough from traditional Celestials to be a great addition in its own right, as its pilots aren't typically short-lived cyborgs. The Dark Age has a lot of designs in it, but very few that I love. The Tenshi, for me, is definitely a machine that I consider to be peak in the 2010 designs that we got from TRO 3145, and 3150. Even just its frame, I can imagine striding onto the battlefield like a menacing monster. Fires burning around it in the war zone, as it steps into the open and terrorizes anything in its path. I look forward to seeing these hopefully becoming a mainstream mech during the Ill Clan era, as I think they're just brilliant. I know a lot of people are going to wish this scored higher, but you have to remember there are like 700 mechs, and number 7 is pretty exceptional in my book for this kind of thing. I first really came to like the Black Knight when I saw it as a kid in Technical Readout 3050, but I really came to love it the older I got. First, it was just for pure crunch, especially while I was going through the custom mech phase of my life. All lasers? Fantastic. My affection for it grew once I got into Comstar, and my affection for it grew more once Mechwarrior 4's first expansion came out, even though I was still mostly a tabletop enjoyer. Even more recently, I've come to enjoy the Clanbuster variant, and the latest Ill Clan variant brings a smile to my face. Even with Comstar dead too, the Knight is increasingly becoming a Free Worlds League mech, which only further endears it to me. So, with my own history of the mech, what it does, and where it is right now, it is firmly placed in my top 10. Well. If it isn't the first clan mech on the list, and it's likely one that's a pretty big surprise for people. It's not been covered yet, and probably won't get covered until 2024, but I am a pretty huge fan of the Mad Cat too, especially in its base configuration. I don't care if it was a Clan Seafox marketing attempt on the Inner Sphere, I think this is just a fantastic mech. Twin Gauss rifles, twin missile launchers, a beautiful appearance. When this thing starts fighting, you know it. It's the Timberwolf's lumbering, violent cousin, and I love it. Funnily enough, I didn't really come to appreciate it upon its launch in the Mechwarrior franchise, but rather years later. It's just a fantastic looking machine, and I personally think it outshines the original Timberwolf as a mech for me as well, both due to its aesthetics and due to its role on the battlefield, which is why it is in my top list, and the Timberwolf is, amusingly, not. Most certainly the Blackliner Prime makes it into my list, and the other configurations are great as well. What moves at 118 km per hour without engaging its mask? What has enough firepower to hunt down and destroy almost any medium or light mech in the game? What has some great configurations often packed with missiles and lasers? Well, it's this little monster. It is my favorite clan medium mech, and it's a beautiful one at that. After its initial, unfortunate art from Technical Readout 3058, which makes it look more like a horribly mutilated penguin, it would get a revision in its card game appearance and forward that makes it one of my favorite looking mechs ever. The best imagery I can fit into my mind is a pair of these breaking out of cover and going into open ground, moving, hunting, and destroying anything they come across with immense speed. They are the ultimate medium mech predators, and I just think that they might be one of the best clan mediums out there, though with notable competition, of course. But that doesn't mean it's my favorite of all time, although it is definitely up there. Number 5 is pretty good. Perfection comes in the form of the Blackliner, at least in my opinion. My favorite clan mech is really one which is pretty widely loved. While I do not think it is as good as the Marauder 2C, I think it's a more enjoyable battlemech to field, and it feels more like a battlemech, rather than a heavily meta-driven war machine, like the Marauder 2C. What does make the Warhammer 2C land for me is it's heavily armored, moves reasonably well, is appropriately gunned, has a diverse array of weapons for multiple targets across multiple ranges, has good heat sinks, and is an absolutely beautiful battlemech in all of its artistic renditions. There are clan mechs that are heavier and more well-armed, certainly, but nothing feels quite like having a Warhammer 2C under one's command. It's a greatly balanced, hard-hitting platform, and is characterful enough to not feel like an overwhelmingly powerful force on the table. In general, you will find my favorites aren't necessarily the best mechs ever made. Otherwise, the Hellstar and Marauder 2C would be at the top of these lists. In general, I appreciate the nuances of designs. I love them for being characterful. And as far as clan mechs go, I really do think, at least in my opinion, that it is a wonderful characterful upgrade over the original. And I feel it is both very clan and very fun. I always try to find a way to sneak one of these into one of my units. The icon of Battletech has become the Atlas. It embodies the grueling, durable hulk that smashes into targets with reckless abandon, much like the inner sphere of the 3025 era. Why do I love it? It was the first mech I ever got. It was the coolest machine in history in my eyes as a kid, and a lot of that shine just simply never wore off. Its place in the lore is unquestionably monstrous, and every assault mech after its existence is always measured up against it. It has a wonderful loadout across most eras, barring the AS-7K Atlas, from the Succession Wars through to the Ill-Clan era, with its loadouts in the Ill-Clan era being utterly devastating in my opinion. But they are still characterful and not purely optimized, which is important. I don't think there is an assault mech that will surpass it in my view. My top 3 choices are all extraordinarily close to one another. It felt like cutting off my own arm to select which one should inhabit where. If I could make all 3 just one broad choice, I would. But sadly, that's not how these things work. In the end, someone had to get the bronze. And unfortunately for the Atlas, it's the Atlas. I'm going to end this entry with part of the monologue from the video I did for this Battlemech, which I should say is the most popular video on the channel, and definitely rightly so. The Atlas is the ultimate inner sphere assault mech. Though it is not without weaknesses, it is in every battlefield, in every campaign, and in every war a force of nature, and a dealer of destruction and death. Fortresses have their walls crumble to its wrath. Mech warriors from across the wars since its arrival have seen their final moments staring down the face of the Death's Head. Even the vaunted Trueborn clan warriors. There are more dangerous from the clans themselves due to lighter weapon systems, but the Atlas still holds a place of fear in soldiers' and warriors' hearts. And it is still the premier of all assault mechs in the minds of commanders and players alike. It has fought for freedom. It has fought for conquest and tyranny. It has been deployed to lifeless, frozen worlds, tropical paradises, and everything in between, all while displaying its horrifying death mask to those in opposition to it, or even those who are allied with it. Battlemechs have often been described as the lords of the battlefield, standing tall as they are piloted by the lords and ladies of the inner sphere. Prior, when I described assault mechs as a whole, I described them as the monsters of the battlefield, there to kill noble warriors before returning to their lairs. But the Atlas is something more. It holds a place above the others. Hence why it became the face of Battletech itself, and later even Mechwarrior. The Atlas transcends these other steel monsters, forcing them to step aside as it makes its way through them. Only a few inner sphere designs dare even stand in this behemoth's way, and many would regret it. The Atlas is no simple mammoth or brute. It stands out from that. It stands above it. It is the king of the monsters. If the Warhammer 2C ended up on this list, it was pretty obvious that the Warhammer was going to land here at some point, so why not the number 2 slot? So, one may ask, why is the Warhammer one of my top 3 battlemechs? What drew me to it? First of all, in all of its iterations, the Warhammer is a fantastic mech in its appearance. It is easily, in my opinion, the best overall look of any original Unseen mechs, and its reseen appearance, especially the CGL model, is absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to get my hands on the new Warhammer sculpts as well. It looks like it's going to be an absolutely fantastic repose. Though I do wish it wasn't the SRM2 variant. Why else do I love these things? Its weapons configuration, in my estimation, is near perfect while not being broken. I don't view the Warhammer's assortment of guns as being truly offensive systems, but as layers of firepower that the opponent has to weather when they want to approach this mech. At a distance, they will be torn by PPCs. As they get into their other engagement distances, medium lasers and SRMs will begin firing, along with intermittent PPC fire. In close, targets will be shredded by machine guns, small lasers, medium lasers, and SRMs, after having weathered the storm on their way in, if they can get that far. I love its different batteries and how they play into one another. If I could make one change, it'd be to switch out its small lasers for machine guns, truthfully. But that's just in game terms, and in 3025 with the 6R at that. Over time, it will evolve, and develop ever more monstrous variations, as most mechs do. But for me, it's the history of many of the best mech warriors ending up in this thing, including legends like Natasha Kerensky. The Warhammer just lends itself to being the ride of champions for some reason, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Much like with the Atlas before, I will be ending this with a passage from my Warhammer video, which I think is more than appropriate. The Warhammer is an unforgettable mech. It is, in many ways, one of the peak designs of the Inner Sphere during the Succession Wars, despite its shortcomings. In addition, in terms of its appearance, it is very much striking as well, whether it be from the licensed appearance of the tomahawk from across, or rather, the unseen appearance, or whether it be the brilliant redesign by Catalyst Game Labs. The aesthetic itself commands the eyes to look at it, and to take in its fantastic view. Beyond its lethal combat abilities, it's no wonder it attracts such pilots as Natasha Kerensky, Karita Yorinaga, and countless gunslingers as well. The Warhammer is not some random machine, fighting as a thug across the battlefield. It is a weapon which has not only survived for 600 years, but has thrived, and in many ways became the standard for what a heavy mech should be. But this Battlemech is only an extension of its pilots, often the experts who guide its cannons to their targets. It has no moral code of its own. It is simply an extension of the designs of its pilots. Whether it has destroyed the lives of countless innocents, or defended them, or to heroically fall against a tide of invaders, it is in their skilled hands. The only truth of the Warhammer, in all of its forms, is that it is the Lord of War, built to satisfy the desires of a dead empire. Given how well Star Corps and the Star League achieved this, it is no surprise that it has survived these 600 years. It remains in the Inner Sphere, an old soldier, but a dangerous one, having never forgotten or lost its days of glory. It is still the first Lord of War. Not every mech can make it into the top 10, despite me having immense affection for them. Hell, even these honorable mentions, which were genuinely fighting with the Celestials for the top slot, only scratched the surface of the Battlemechs I enjoy. But for videos like this, you've got to pick the top slots. Really, if I were making a top 50, it'd be a lot easier, let alone a top 10 with a few honorable mentions. The first that comes to mind is a mech that people absolutely love, and so do I. How can I not? The King Crab is one of the most terrifying sights in Battletech, and though I love its appearance, backstory, and potential, it just never has compared to the others in the top 10 list for me. It's still one of my favorite Battlemechs ever, to be clear, but it's just not at the top. What's more satisfying than showing up with 2 gun cannon arms, and literally just blasting just about anything in the world to scrap? It's just fun. And you all know this is the truth, that carcinization is real. And soon all will become crab. How can I not put this one in my honorable mentions? I love the Marauder 2. It's my favorite variant of the Marauder overall, even. It's not just about its battlefield performance, wherein it's an endurance king in most of its forms. It's the history behind it. One reason why the Marauder 2 video ended up being almost 90 minutes long is the fact that there is just so much history to this unit. The wars it participated in, the design changes, and the in-universe reasons for it all are incredible to me. The Marauder 2 is the ultimate Marauder, in my view. It'll always be special to me. It's just not in my top 10. One of the true, all-time greats among medium mechs. It's almost hard to write this portion. Do you feel the need? The need for speed? Because this is the total package. The Phoenix Hawk will rip through mechs heavier than it if used correctly. And it's the ultimate terror to light mechs. I love its appearance as well, both unseen and reseen, and I think it's just so iconic to the setting as a whole. This thing, in essence, breathes fire in my opinion, and is one of the all-time greats. It's just not in my top 10. Another assault mech, but I can't help it. The Executioner is just so different than what an assault mech is expected to be. I think it's my favorite assault omnimech in the game. It's 95 tons, but it's almost like a weird super medium mech. With its mask, it just blasts across the battlefield, and I think that's just incredible personally. Because it has clan weaponry too, it's not badly armed, but it is definitely undergunned. Still, I just love it, and I look forward to sticking a ton of these in various units. Definitely, it is one of my top favorites. But as before, it's just not in the top 10. I remember first seeing this machine a couple years ago for the Free Worlds League, and I thought it looked incredibly sharp. It was a downsized Warhammer married to a Thunderbolt, and I just looked at it and I was like, this is incredible, even out the gates. The Anzu is a trooper for the new era, and I absolutely love it. It's not fast, but it's gorgeous, and it hits hard enough to make other mechs think twice about engaging it. I definitely love it, and it's one of my favorite Dark Age designs. Bravo, Anzu. If only it were true that there could be only one. I love the Highlander. It was a real honor to work on its video, and it was a great trip to go down its storied history. It was kind of shocking to me when I realized it was a Capellan mech for much of its post-Star League launch too, but I'm not complaining. What a great machine, I definitely dig it. The ultimate Succession Wars Trooper. This is one of the best medium mechs ever designed, despite its shortcomings, and I'd argue that the Centurion gets better the more Centurions it has around it. More autocannons, more LRMs, more everything. I'm a huge fan of it, and a huge fan of its appearance as well, especially the MWO appearance. Davians sometimes just build things better. The last of our honorable mentions is a mech which helped me change the entirety of my content on this channel. I don't think it's possible to overstate just how important it has been for the videos I do, for starters. But as a mech, it really does have a hero's journey, and it's just fantastically put together with time. What an absolute gem. There are always more. I could keep this list going, I'm sure, forever. But there must be an eventual end to these. And the end is here. We're hitting our number 1 slot now, so fear not. For those of you who go to my live streams, you'll have to know that this was in the running for the top mech. Why? Because it's the one which I've used to the greatest effect, the most often, in games which I've been in real life and Mega Mech. My preference for eras is the Succession Wars, and this mech has delivered for me time and time again. It ends up being my favorite just because of that alone, let alone its storied, fascinating history. I really do feel that I didn't do the Wolverine justice in my video on it, so at some point in the next few years, I would like to revisit it and give it a more appropriate video. So why is this my favorite, and why is it the most successful for me? Because I tend to run the 6M, and it hits hard, moves fast, and is heavily armored. It will outrun, outfight, or outendure just about anything it comes across. It's like the literal Wolverine of real life. Just because something is bigger and heavier doesn't mean they shouldn't be afraid. During the Succession Wars, just about anything the 6M comes across is a potential victim, whether it be a lighter or heavier mech. Sure, there are notable rivals like the Griffin or Phoenix Hawk, but inevitably they can't overtake this monster for what it is. It's 55 tons, and it has the same battle value as a Warhammer. There is a reason for this. I did have one game that will forever live on in my memory, where I managed to lose most of my lance early on, for a minimal response to my enemy. I had to face down a Crusader, Marauder, Orion, and Awesome with a single Wolverine. Luck always plays a role in any dice game, and the dice were most certainly on my side, and the battlefield was big enough to allow me to maneuver, but hitting a floating critical on an Orion's LRM ammunition with my first shot, then knocking the leg off of a Crusader while it was in a depression, before kicking the leg off the Marauder and then knocking the Awesome off a high location, is the highlight of my Battletech gaming experience over 28 years. Sure, I got a lucky floating crit. I knocked the Crusader over at the wrong time, and then I was able to devour the Marauder at close range. That is a much more balanced way of looking at all of this, but it just embodies to me every reason why the mech is so superb. My opinion of it diminishes during the clan invasion forward, it just doesn't have the teeth it once did. And that's not a problem per se, as it is still a solid design. But for me, it is the king of the battlefield of 3025 and much of the earlier Succession Wars. I genuinely feel secure when it's active in my lance, because I know no matter what, as long as it's alive, I have a piece that I can rely on to get me across the finish line. And I will conclude as I have with the other top 3 so far. Of all the 55-ton mechs from the original TRO 3025, I think this is the standout. The one that breaks the mold, especially with the terrifying 6M variant which would emerge from the Free Worlds League during the Succession Wars. Anything it can't outgun, it can outflank. Anything it can't outrun, it can outfight. Now, as war once again ravages the Inner Sphere, you will still find the Wolverine in its latest configurations. Perhaps it is just as prolific in its numbers as in the times before, spread across the new conflict zones, doing what they were made to do, winning. Thank you for joining me for this video. This is the last video of 2022 that will be going live on the channel. And I just want to thank everyone, sincerely, for all the amazing support that you've offered me this year. From just watching videos, to joining live streams, to being a member of the channel and supporting what I do. I really do mean it. This channel wouldn't be anywhere without you guys supporting it in various ways. And I really am humbled by the support you've shown me throughout this year. I am hoping that 2023 will be bigger and better for what is to come next, and I hope you'll join me as we continue our collective journey, exploring the rich and amazing setting of Battletech. But also, as a final note, what is your favorite Battlemech? Let me know in the comment section below. And to anyone watching this before the end of the year, have a very happy New Year's.